So what you want this time? I give it to you free. Get your popcorn, baby. You can make a fool out of me. If you need a room, you can have my house. Take my cash, take my bed, take the teeth out my mouth. So mama, baby, you can make a fool out of me. Oh, would you give it up now? I bury your mistake. 'Cause you ain't so pretty with such a guilty face. Fucking me over won't be too hard. If you need any money, take my credit cards. Mama, baby, you can make a fool out of me. Can you feel the mud? Not like that, really. I can open my eyes so you can smoke for free. Talk shit about my mother to you. Talk shit about you. Everybody else. Talk shit about my mother to you. Talk shit about you. Everybody else. Won't you give it up now? I give it up again. Let my guard down, baby, so you can get a better aim. Let me take over when the going's rough, and maybe that'll make me feel good enough. Smile, baby, you can make a fool out of me. Can you feel the mud? Not like that, really. I can open my eyes so you can smoke for free. Talk shit about my mother to you. Talk shit about you. Everybody else. Talk shit about my mother to you. Talk shit about you. Everybody else. If you need a room, you can have my house. Take my cash, take my bed, take the teeth out my mouth. So mama, baby, you can make a fool out of me. Can you feel the mud? Not like that, really. I can open my eyes so you can smoke for free. Talk shit about my mother to you. Talk shit about you. Everybody else. Talk shit about my mother to you. Talk shit about you. Everybody else.
Cool, man. Sounds amazing.
So we're big, we're bad, we're back at the Motor Museum with the rather wonderful Mr. Al Groves.
Hello.
And he is going to record some drums with
Tom.
Shifu.
Oh, Shifu. Yeah.
And the track is called
Give it.
Give It. What I love about this is, first of all, never recorded in this room. Very excited to hear the drums. But you are going to tune the drums to the key of the song.
Yeah. I think it just helps them fit. You don't have to fight resonances. You don't have to dampen them as much. I want them to. The drums are a pitched instrument. They're not just percussive. They have a pitch and a harmonic content to them.
Great.
You wouldn't play a guitar without tuning it. You wouldn't play a piano without tuning it. Why would you play a pitched instrument without tuning it?
Okay, so we're going to start off with a kick.
Yeah.
What do you want to hear on that, seeing as the song is in F?
Can you play me an F, please?
I will play you a low F for the kick. Dun, dun, dun. F.
So Warren, if you could just kind of play it, kind of keep. That's the one. And then we do the batter head and the resonant head at the same pitch. Warren, can you remember what the next interval we decided was?
It would have been a major third up, would be A.
Was it A? Thank you.
A. A?
A? So I like to go up from I like to go low to high when I tune, because sometimes what happens is you tune the kick and then you naturally tune the snare and the rack, and they work really well, and then you've run out of low notes for the floor tom, so I find it more sensible to go lowest. Okay, and then did we have the rack tom as a B?
B flat.
Please. Warren, please could you play the B flat an octave below?
Sure.
Thank you. So, mic-wise, it's very simple. It's very minimal. Inside the kick is a Bayer Dynamic boundary microphone called the TGD71. It's also got the Dr. Alien Smith Alien 8 that we discussed in there. And I line those two up above each other. So try keep them as kind of time aligned as I can. And I generally like to have them either a third towards the volume of the drum towards the batter head, or a third of the depth of the drum towards the resonant head. I don't like to put it in the middle because you get a great big null in the middle, I find. So if I want more a kind of faster attack, I'll tend to come towards this third of it. And if I want a boomier, longer, more, maybe a softer sound, I'll kind of go further down the depth of it. Toms are really simple. They're 421s on the top, and underneath the floor tom is also a Shure Beta 52. And I try and get the tom mics quite steep. I like them to be as kind of on axis with the skin as I can get them, really. I just find it's brighter, it's more low end, it's just a faster sound. When I come across drums, this applies to all the drums, snares as well, kind of more parallel to the skin. Generally, the way I describe the sound is it's less bright, so duller. There's more of the kind of thwack content to it, but I want things to sound a bit more kind of finished, a bit more smiley, and I find this kind of approach gives me a more perpendicular to it, gives me that more quickly. I also try and make sure, it's not crucial, but I just think it's a good habit, that the top and bottom microphones are at a sort of similar distance from the skin apart. So if this is kind of, the width of 3 fingers worth, I'll try and make sure the bottom is the same, and I'll try and make sure it's the same on each drum, just so that you kind of have the most predictable EQ between the rack and the floor to start with. The snare drum is the Calrec CM1050 that we talked about, which is a small diaphragm condenser. I really, really, really love this on top snare. And the same principle applies. Where I can, I'll try and get it as kind of pointed down as steeply as I can really allow. Obviously, the consideration is you don't want it to be invasive and in the drummer's way, and you kind of don't want it to introduce loads of hi-hat bleed and mess around with all that. So there is always a bit of a compromise. Underneath is a Bayer M201. This is something I'm specific about. I really like to get as much of the bottom snare wires as I can. So I try and get it as close to the bottom snare wires in terms of, whereabouts on the center of the drum it is, pointed really quite perpendicular to it. So I don't really care about matching it to this. I just want to get the most low end, the most sizzle, and the most high end. To be honest, the drum from the top microphone, especially with this mic, sounds pretty close already. So the bottom snare signal is a very much a task specific. It adds the sizzle, it adds the thump, and it's sort of like the hype channel of the snare. Hi-hat can change quite a lot, but today I'm on this mood of the Bayer M201 again. I'm in that kind of mode, so I've gone with that today. If it doesn't work, I might switch this to an AKG 451, or things like an RE20. I found quite cool on hi-hats before. And above the kit they are overhead, but really I treat these as crash mics. I'm not really interested in capturing the whole drum sound from the overheads. It's never really been something for me that's been that valuable. I like to have the crashes be an event on the left, an event on the right. When I listen to the kit in stereo, I want it to go, and I've got all that control then to pan the crashes where I want, especially for the kind of raucous guitar music that I tend to produce. having those crashes cut through and then disappear when they're not being used is quite valuable to me. So in an ideal world, I would only hear crashes and maybe the ride on the overheads. So I'll kind of play with these quite a lot. Sometimes they end up in unusual positions because it just so happens that's where you get the best representation of the crash with the least amount of hi-hat racked on. Sometimes the leftover can be here, sometimes it can be here. I make my best guess when I start, but invariably I'll come through and I'll move them around.
Do you pan drummer's perspective?
I do. I love drummer's perspective. I want the hi-hat. I want to pretend I'm at the kit.
Okay.
I don't know why. I just... What I often do is, and the hi-hats are generally quite loud in my mixes, the hi-hat will be on the left-hand side, and then there'll be an opposing thing. It'd be a tambourine or a guitar that complements, or there'll be something on the right-hand side, because I want that kind of shimmer left and right, something rhythmic here from the hi-hat, something rhythmic here. But every time I try and pan audience perspective, I feel like I don't understand what to hear. I've tried, 20 years, I've tried every time, go no, the other way, and I just can't get used to it. In terms of close mics on the kit, that's it. There are no crush mics. There are no outside kick mics. There are nothing special. I just find this is a really reliable start point.
This little room here is amazing.
It really helps, to be honest.
Yeah. Have you? I was wondering if there'd be curtains here.
We have tried, yeah. So actually, on the other side, you can see where there have been hooks screwed into the front of it to dry.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
And it kind of closes things off a little bit. But fundamentally, you'll hear when we throw the mics up, the close mics, it's dry, it's close, it's dry, it's intimate, it's very immediate. I don't really think the curtain offers much. And
then as with rooms, we've got the stereo.
Yeah, so ribbon. I do the stereo R88.
Yep.
And then below it, I do the R44 as well. Usually my technique is to just roam around the room. I'll have the drummer play and I'll just walk around, and there'll be certain spots in the room, and it can be different, different drummers, different tunings, different kits. It's never really the same. And I'll just find a spot where the kick drum and the snare drum sound really solid. And I go, they're really projecting out here. And I'll just go, there's the R44. And then on top of it, there's the R88. Sometimes it'll be here. If I want the sound to literally, the room mics, the further away you get, obviously you get that time delay with them. And if you really want to exaggerate that, then I'll really come to the back here. Or sometimes I've been in the corners and you get that low end build up in the corner. Sometimes I'll take advantage of that. But generally somewhere around this kind of hemisphere is a really good starting point. From the room mics, I'm looking for everything. I want a really, really good amount of low end. I'm not really want to carve that away at the early stages. I want to feel the air and the projection from the kick drum. I want the snare to be as loud as possible, really. The cymbals and the other things, they can be ideally somewhat subdued. My approach is really to make a best guess, start somewhere, listen, and then see how close I am. And I'll come back forward a few times and move around.
I'm excited to hear this.
Me too. I hope it's good.
Very excited. Yeah, and we're going to walk back in. You can follow us out. And I like the fact that you're predominantly using the console.
Yeah, sure. There's only a couple of things that are, after you, that are outboard, really.
So I suppose how much EQ are you applying on the console on the way in?
So far, none yet, and we'll see.
Okay.
What will get EQ'd is almost certainly the hi-hat will have loads of low end taken out of it.
Yeah.
So the hi-hat will be just sculpted.
Low mids taken out of the toms?
Sometimes.
Okay.
Usually all I'm really doing to the toms is brightening them slightly. Usually. Sometimes it will maybe, you find that the rack and the floor, one is thicker than the other.
But aren't you using these on the toms?
Yes, so they do 90% of the work really for me.
Is that running in parallel and blended back in?
Exactly that, yeah.
Comes up on faders and then prints down?
Exactly that. And the kick and the snare also have, the kick goes to a DBX 160 and a transient designer in parallel that I'll print to the kick track.
So do you print one kick track?
Yeah, one kick track.
So you take the two mics and you print them down to one?
So the constituent part of this is that the two kick drum microphones will come up here. Yeah. The boundary microphone and the alienate.
Yeah.
They will get sent to bus one. And on bus one is an API EQ, the API 560, that is for some just overall shaping of the bus.
Right.
Then there's also a parallel track fed from another bus on the console. And that that track features the transient designer and the DBX 160 compressor. for parallel compression, and also some transient. I can either exaggerate the attack, or I can shorten it, or I could do whatever I want with it really. And then that gets fed back to bus 1. So the kick drum is actually a combination of 2 microphones and 1 parallel track, and it will all go via the API 560 to 1 track in Pro Tools. And sometimes, to be honest with you, that's all the kick drum is, and the mixes doesn't get touched. It just get gated and just gets left, or sometimes some extra low end. Hey Tom, could you just kind of start playing things that are comfortable, something that's kind of related to the song? Nothing too taxing, nothing too fast, and let me just get a picture of what I have. Thank you. So if I start with the kick drum, usually simple place to start. The kick drum is going to the first 1073, both microphones, so the boundary microphone and the dynamic microphone. Both of them have some EQ on. I'll just turn that off before I even start, because it's cheating otherwise. And the first thing I do, I just want to hear them and kind of see what kind of picture they offer. So that's the boundary.
That's just flat.
Just flat, that's just as it is. And then that's the dynamic microphone, the Alienate.
And that's flat too.
Completely flat. That's just as it comes.
Great.
Together. Kind of can favour whether you want a kind of slappy, tight, faster kick drum sound, or whether you want something kind of more, what is that, boomy and more rounded in the low end. And I wouldn't say one is better or worse. You could quite happily use one or the other. But I like, with both, being able to kind of shape a different profile. But really, I like to EQ quite confidently. So I'm quite happy to dig in and make that into a finished kick drum sound. Okay. So I'll go to a 1073 and I'll just start to do things. My philosophy is, why record it flat and wait to make it right when I already know how that's too flat. So you put the EQ in, and we kind of do stuff like this. And really what I'm looking for is brightening it. I like the top end to kind of saturate a little bit, almost like a tape machine would do. Yeah. Obviously it's not a tape machine. So I'm not afraid to kind of really find the point of saturation on the high end. Go there. And then mid-range wise, I mean, that sounds cool, and that's a sound, plenty of mid-range. But I'll often start to scoop it until you find that the low end is revealed. Rather than me boosting the low end, I'm kind of trying to reveal where the low end exists.
So you're going up to 700.
Yeah. I actually have to admit, I don't even look at the knobs most of the time. Unless I've really gone all the way, okay, something's wrong. But generally you just do it by ear.
Yeah.
You just kind of click them. Do you know what? It was actually, Warren, could you pull that back up to 700? I think I've gone down. The mid band on the top, 1073. Just click the frequency over to 700 for me, please.
It is on 700, yeah.
Oh, is it? Drop it to 0.35. Do 700 again, please. Oh no, we'll stay at 700, okay. And then the same trick on dynamic.
But you haven't done any low-end boost, though?
Not yet, no. I invariably probably will do, but yeah. Usually I'll try and, I mean, it's easy to overdo it, then get very carried away, and then tomorrow regret, why is there so much low end in your kick drum? Really what I'm looking for is just how much can I carve and push each microphone? How can I exaggerate the top end of the brightest one? How can I exaggerate the mid-range of the other one? Usually I'll go too far and then we're like, why have I done that? And go halfway and they go, that was perfect.
So what are you looking for?
Clarity more than anything. I'm trying to remove things that are not offering value. So there's a kind of a honk, that kind of sound that is unnecessary. Yeah. And I want the kick drum to be as loud and as present as possible. So I'm going to try and carve out what is impeding that and leave them with only the goods that I want, which is generally, for my taste, good amount of low end kind of impact and a lot of that top end articulation. I like the smack. I want it to feel like the beat is coming through the head, but I don't typically make music that requires a soft kick drum. When I do that, I'll do the same thing. I'll just be a lot less aggressive with it. But I know for this particular track, it's a kind of heavy, joyful alt indie kind of track. It's a little punk element to it. It's tough and it's full of energy. So all the drum sound has to convey that energy.
I was saying when I first heard it that if they went a little bit more kind of English on the vocals, it'd be almost Britpop.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a big Blur and subsequent eras were a big reference, big point of inspiration.
If it just suddenly got a little bit more like this.
Yeah, absolutely. That's it. It's ironically, I was kind of imagining Blur meets No Doubt as the kind of points. Somewhere around there maybe. And then both of these microphones go to another bus on the console here, another channel, which is called Kick X. And what this is the blend of both of those, post fader, go to a DBX 160, and then they go to a transient designer. And I blend those in parallel.
So that is here?
Yeah.
DBX 160 here. And then this left-hand transient design.
It is. And this is never the same twice, this whole setup. It's just feel. It just goes by how much point can I get from it, how much kind of extra. Sometimes it goes like that on a crazy day. And it just adds an extra layer of like steam and intensity to the same sound. It's not changing it drastically, it's just more of a good thing,
And is that going through the API as well?
It is, but the API is flat right now. But then invariably, once we get the rest of the picture up, I'll use the API to kind of give me an overall shape of the kick drum.
Once you've got the rest of the kit up.
Exactly, yeah. If you do it now, it's too easy, or I find it's too easy to get carried away and kind of go too far. It always sounds a bit different when you go towards the rack and you come back here and you go, okay. Somewhere there is cool though. So in the snare drum, this is the Calrec mic on top of it. And I love this microphone because it's got so much low end, so much density in the low end. It's not about amount of bass, it's about how solid that low end is and that bass. And that gives me it very closely. Preamp's a bit hot, which is why we get a lot of snare drum. Again, on the snare top, I'm really not shy with EQing it with the Neves. I find the Neves is just such a satisfying EQ. You can really crank things and not worry about it being. It's hard to overdo. So I'm brightening it, and I'm gonna focus that low end a bit more by taking out some of the mid range. So that's EQ flat. EQ in.
Nice.
And that's it. Done. Snare bottom. Flip the phase. No, to be honest, that snare bottom mic could probably be moved. It's not as bright as I would like it to be, ideally. Yeah, I'd like more top end, really. I mean, just to simulate it on EQ, I'd like it to be kind of more like that. And sometimes what I find myself doing is just to prove the concept, rather than me walking through, I'll just kind of sculpt it and scope it and go, what would I wish it would sound like? If I like that, then I go, okay, let me turn that off, and I'll go and I'll try and move the mic and pursue that sound and get closer before I have to do so much of that. And again, to illustrate it, that's why I wanted to do that, because I wanted to really add that detail to the snare drum. The white noise, just to give it kind of energy. And then both of these microphones go to another parallel chain. The only, same as the kick drum, the only difference is I like to use a distressor instead of the DBX. Distressor's set at 6-to-1, quite traditional, you know, nothing unusual or out of the box.
That's helping the bottom snare a lot.
Just gives it that extra length and weight, and especially if we then take the transient designer. I think either the microphone has slipped, or as Tom's playing, the snare drum tuning is changing, because I can hear the note of the low end drifting slightly. It may be that the top head has just slackened slightly, but we'll correct that in a minute. You can hear the dong, dong has appeared. Hey Tom, has anything changed on the snare drum in terms of dampening or lug locks or the microphone moved or anything?
All the lug locks are in the same place. Bottom microphone is facing right into the middle of the head. Top is like pretty much on the edge of the black dot.
Just give the snare wires maybe like a turn tighter, please, will you? And then when you've done that, just go back to what you're doing and I'll see what that's like, please. When I make my next trip through, I will go through and have a, just an overview of the snare tune and make sure everything's where I want it. But I know that my next move is going to be to take both snare mics and the parallel, and on the bus that they get recorded through, they go to a Pultec style EQ, and I do a very old school, like low end, top end, a bit of cutting, and the low end type of thing. I'm going to do that now because I kind of know what I want anyway. Even though I know the tuning and the mic position is not entirely perfect, I don't need to wait. I'm confident enough, and I've been in this room 11 years. I know what I need it to be. Something more like that. Just want to make the drum sound bigger, really. I mean, cheating, it's like a smiley face, really. Sure. It's hyping, it's the loudness button on the hi-fi.
But it's working.
But it's working, so why not? Hey Tom, could you do me a quick favour, please? You see your hi-hat mic, I think is pointing straight down towards your hats, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Can you just point it more, angle it so it's kind of pointing more towards you, but still hitting the at the hi-hat. So I guess more towards the edge rather than straight down.
Can you see where that is
Yeah.
from here? Is that better?
It might also be quite high from here, from looking at it here.
Do you want it to be a bit lower?
Could you do that?
Yeah.
It's really good having a drummer who goes to the studio loads because they are confident moving mic stands for you. So I'm just looking for a change of phase between the hi-hat mic and the snare drum. It's amazing how much snare drum you get in the hi-hat and how much hi-hat you get in the snare drum, and the phase correlation of those is quite a lot. In my mind right now, I'm kind of making mental notes of all the issues I need to go and solve by mic positioning, but logic tells me gather them up and make one trick rather than like stop, start, stop, start, stop. It'll stop Tom getting so bored as well. So I think the hi-hat mic, for those hi-hats, is too dark. I don't think the dynamic is very valuable. I think it's more like a 4-5-1 would solve that. Hey Tom, please can I hear the floor tom? Just slow, steady quarter notes, please. So this is the 4-2-1 on the floor tom. And this is the underside beta 52. Tom, are you hitting it really hard or not so hard?
Like medium.
Can you hit it hard for me? Floor tom goes to the Aphex 204, which does that.
Oh, wow.
Kind of does everything. And then what I do is, again, I get in with some EQ and I do that. Cut out some of the broadness and try and make it a bit tighter. Brighten it maybe. It's on the top microphone. Bottom microphone, to be honest, I barely ever touch. Okay, Tom, can I have the rack tom, please? So the rack is just the top microphone, there's no bottom mic on this. And then the Aphex. Okay, Tom, can you go rack floor, please? Rack floor, rack floor. And I'm just looking for the balance between the rack and the floor. Kind of, make sure it's like even level. Sometimes the rack tom will be a little thinner than the floor tom because it's a lot smaller. Sometimes just a little recarving of the low mids and bottom end can be quite satisfying. And these are all things that you may do in, you may say, well, you're kind of sort of mixing as you go along. Well, cool. I'd rather the multi-track sound close.
Oh, no, I'm with you. Yeah, I'm totally with you.
Okay, Tom, cool, thank you. Can we get the left and right crashes? So just alternate between left, right, left, right. So this is the KM84 on the left. And you can hear how I'm getting as much of the opposite cymbal in that I don't want, the right hand crash in the left hand overhead, so that definitely needs some help. That's more like it on that side. Very good. Okay, Tom, I'll come and sort that out in a sec. All good. Can you just go back to some grooves and some things, please? Room mics. This is the R88 to start with.
Oh, yeah.
Easy peasy. You know what I mean?
Considering it's like 3 feet in front of the drums, it's crazy what that room's doing.
I know. And the thing I love about it is the balance. It's kick drum, it's snare drum, it's kind of sub-toms. Cymbals are very restrained. And then I also have the R44 underneath.
Oh, mids in that, yeah.
when you blend all three together. Something I quite like to do, the R44 to me is kind of a bit of a wild card. I'm less invasive on the stereo ribbons, the R88. I'm kind of more willing to leave that natural because I like its original sound. The R44 sounds great, but I also quite like to carve it and make it into a thing, make it, you know, sculpt it the way I want. So it's quite reasonable for me to almost try and find like a finished one mic drum sound to then blend back in. So that's just a stereo. Now it sounds better. You know?
Yeah, it's fantastic.
And then we put that with kick and snare, and then I just spend a long time playing with the phase relationships between them. And then while I'm here, I'm starting to get now a sense of what I want this kick drum overall EQ to be. So I come to the API and just start to see what I can get from it, really. Sometimes the frequencies that you would never think are the ones that are the most satisfying, like the 500.
Yeah.
Quite like the smack of that. And I kind of don't really have a science to this. I'm just seeing what the interplay between the bands are.
Sure.
And I always do this, and I always go, I should know this by now. I should know what to do. And I never do. I just go with the flow, and I always end up coming out with a kick drum I love, and snare drum I love. You know, never really doubt my choices at the end of it. And then maybe we go back and have a listen over in the center, and then it causes you to kind of slightly rebalance the mics, and you just kind of iteratively moving towards a more finished drum sound every time. And I want punch as well. I want even punch, and I want the kick and the snare to be equally satisfying, as much low end in one as the other. Thank you, Tom. I'm going to come through and move some things, so hold fire for a sec, please. So at this point now, I've got a mental image of what is not good enough and what I need to pursue, and kind of, I'll try and go and do it all in one go. Hello. So just some corrections. That sounds cool. How are you?
Good.
Yeah, happy?
Yeah, I'm good.
So we said, I wasn't quite happy with the hi-hat. Are these the hi-hats we used last time?
Yes. Did we put a cloth on them?
I hope not. I don't remember. Let's change the hi-hat mic to something else. So we said separation between the crashes could do with some help. So looking at it, I think we'll bring this down a little. And they really kind of become more like close mics by now. But you've seen how much of an image overall the room mic gets. So it's kind of like, I don't really need, in this environment, this room, I don't really need the overheads to be specifically, kit mics. I'm quite happy for them to just be crash mics because that's the kit mic.
Sure.
See what something like that is like. That one I always find very easy to position. I don't know why the right overhead. Generally, if someone's got a bigger crash on the right-hand side, maybe, I wonder. Yeah. The left one I find more tricky to get because you get a lot of hi-hat that I want to avoid. The left crashes are usually smaller, so I don't know if they just don't have quite as much projection and throat on them. But this is always the one that I spend the most time fiddling with. Try that. So it's a snare drum. Just give it a little gentle tap. Say that, I think it's a tuning thing. Can I just? It just sounds to me like there's a lug that's kind of changed slightly. I'm going to go all the way down and come back up again. So sometimes you just go too far off piste. You try and correct it too much, and you need a bit of. It's easier to just start again. So I've been through. I kind of had that mental list of things I wanted to change. I changed the hi-hat mic out to an AKG 451 because I was looking for something brighter and kind of faster. I retuned the snare drum a little bit. I think it's gonna just kind of gone a little bit awry across the tuning, so it was easy to take the whole thing down, stretch it out again, come back up, which I feel more confident with. I have just slightly adjusted the bottom mic position just to try and capture a little bit more of the snare wires, and I have moved the left and right overheads just kind of slightly wider, slightly lower to try and get the left and right crash separation a bit better. So let's see how close we are. Hey Tom, how hard are you hitting things, especially kicks and snares?
Like a medium level.
Can you start? So I'm going to get you to start drumming at take level. So 101%, please. So I'm just cutting the low end back on the hi-hat. It feels a much better starting point. I still think that the Tom's choice of hi-hats is maybe not my preference, but there's a compromise for me about how much of it do I want it to leave it as Tom's preference. If he was really attached to that particular hi-hat sound, then it's my job to kind of reflect that and not make it a non-problem. So I'm kind of at a point where I'd say maybe just some EQ is going to help me shape that into the shape I want while still leaving Tom with the kind of hi-hat choice that he likes. So all I'm doing is I'm cutting low end below about 150 hertz, and a little bit of low mids have come out around about 1.6K, I think, 1.8. Nothing drastic, just helps to kind of narrow and tighten the hi-hats up. Okay, Tom, let's try those crashes again, please, left and right. Okay, Tom, it's really close. Can your left-hand crash just go directly up? So this is a kind of a hack or a cheat. So looking at Tom's cymbals, his left-hand crash is only, I think, maybe a 14 or a 16-inch. It's not hugely loud, and I think it's dominate. The right-hand crash is dominating the left-hand side. So I could either mess around with overhead mics and move things around a bit, or sometimes it's easier to just get the drummer, if they can tolerate it, to push the crash directly up, so it's physically closer to the mic and further away from everything else. I've known Tom for long enough that he'll tell me if he's uncomfortable. So, or if a drummer, I always check with the drummer and say, "Are you comfortable for me to do that? Will it impede you playing?" If it doesn't, we'll go as high as they can stand. Really, Tom.
Yes.
Is that uncomfortable for you up there?
I can go as high as you want.
There you go. Okay, cool. Let's try that. Do the left and right again, please. That's much better. Perfect. Now it's just a matter of balancing left and right, really. Okay, Tom, let's get some more AC/DC covers, please. And then second phase of the cymbal mics. Snare drum has more low end when it's reversed. And then the next thing I do, and I find myself doing this all the time, when I listen to a combination of the close mic, so all the kicks, all the snares, the hi-hats and the overheads, I kind of find this mid-range has this kind of lack of focus to it. And I go, okay, where is that lack of focus coming from? If I solo just a kick, I say, okay, on its own, kick drum sounds great. It's really tight. That's actually, for me, a really satisfying starting point for a kick drum. It's got loads of low end. It's really, really tight and fast. And it's got that nice slap and smack to it. If that was a kick drum in a record, at the end of it, I'd be quite happy. So the lack of focus isn't coming from the kick. Same for the snare. I'd argue the snare kind of exhibiting those same qualities that I find quite attractive. So only when I introduce the cymbals that things kind of get a little bit unfocused. What I am almost certain that will be is just more mid-range than I need on the overheads. And this is, again, going back to that principle of saying every microphone and track that I record has to serve a purpose. And I'm almost mixing now from the get-go. I know that the overheads are going to have more information in them overall than I'm going to need and I'm going to want when it comes to mixing it. Or even if I'm not mixing it and it's going to somebody else, there's no point recording it in a way that they instantly have to do something. So I'd quite happy to do it now. So I think just a broad cut of mid-range on the overheads would help to clarify things a little more, take out some of the extra weight that isn't adding anything valuable. So without, in. And really, it's as kind of rudimentary as that. I've just done a broad cut at around about just under 1K. Really not that detailed. Just something kind of broad strokes. Same on the other side. Hey Tom, I'm getting pretty close here to being ready for something. I basically manually strip silenced the toms, so I went through wherever the toms weren't being hit, I removed the audio, so I don't need to hear the bleed and the rumble. And then there were occasional times where just through us working quickly today and things, and only giving Tom the opportunity to do one take, some of the final tom hits on his accents were maybe not as hard as I would pester him to do. So the cymbal bleed was a little bit invasive. So because we have clean tom hits, I'll just take the decay portion of, for example, the floor tom, and I'll just paste that across. So Tom will hit rack floor and then cymbal on the next downbeat, and I'll paste the decay of the floor tom across the bleed from the cymbal so that the tom hit doesn't end so abruptly. To be honest, you can see where I've been messing around with levels and playing around with things. I'll go through and just check. Usually we do more takes, but in this instance, I would probably just clip gain down a couple of those and even out the snare drum a little bit if necessary. And often where hi-hats aren't being used, I'll strip silence hi-hats. Anywhere that the drum, a particular part hasn't been played, it'll get strip silence. So the only thing I'm hearing is what's intended. If it's a kick drum, if it's a snare drum, if the hi-hat mic is on but there's no hi-hat, that hi-hat mic will be strip silenced off. Same with sometimes room mics, I'll strip silence them if I'm not using them, or if there's gaps in between. Sometimes even snare drums, sometimes you can gate them, or it's easier just to literally go through and strip silence them so that the gate then has less heavy lifting to do. Editing is like a dark art, I think, to edit and do it so you don't hear it, and do it so that you create the illusion, but I guess economize the audio. But yeah, that's kind of what I do.